our meetings are, we gave a report last time because our elections task force meetings are the first Monday of the month. And this month, the first Monday of the month comes after our regular monthly meeting. So we haven't met since that time. The only thing that, and I don't know if Bill has anything to add, but the only thing I wanted to mention was that the Texas primary was yesterday. And we had talked in our task force about several candidates that we thought would be important to look at. We hadn't yet made decisions, but I thought I would mention that one of the candidates that we were talking about to beat was Greg Casar, and he actually won the Democratic nomination against a conservative incumbent Democrat. And two of the others, Jessica Cisneros and Jasmine Crockett, are going to be in runoffs, and it looks like they will probably win. So we'll see. That's the only thing I had to add. Bill, did you have anything else?
Only just to say we did have our first meeting in February. It was well attended. There's a wide interest within the group in terms of what we're going to look at, what we're going to work on. We're particularly concerned about, of course, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House and how that can change. We're going to be looking at races that we feel are progressively, worthy of being considered progressives, but at the same time, races that look like have a chance of winning, and then also races that we feel are very key and pivotal to the outcome of the state of Congress in Washington. At the same time, we're also looking at, I don't know, you can correct me on this, Marshall, if you want, but I think we're also looking at some, not necessarily, state and local stuff within California, but I think we are also deferring to sisters on a lot of local stuff, especially around the country, because that's their focus. We may look at other, I think that's basically what we're doing, right, Marshall?
Yeah, I think we are taking a broader look because we want to keep the House, we want to keep the Senate, and those are critical. And we also want to make sure that progressives get in whatever we can do because they all have an equal vote. Yeah.
And I'm going to stop you there because I see that Senator Becker has arrived. Welcome.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn over to Ashley to do a formal introduction.
Oh, formal. Okay. Heavy responsibility.
But if everybody else would please mute.
Senator Josh Becker represents the residents of California's Senate District 13, which includes most of San Mateo County and the northern portion of Santa Clara County. He was elected to office in November 2020. In Josh's former life, he was a public policy innovator working in community activism, technology, and social justice, which turns out to be the perfect background for being elected to the legislature. Perhaps we should make it a requisite for all future candidates. So he hit the ground running when he was elected, and he has been hitting home runs ever since. He's had a busy day. I saw you this morning at about 6:45 on Channel 3 talking about the president's State of the Union address. So without further ado, I am turning this over to Senator Josh Becker.
Well, thank you for it is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful introduction that I will cherish. So I really appreciate that. And it is a long day for you too, if you were up at that time. So I appreciate you.
Oh, I taped it. I was not up.
Oh, okay. Well, my son's asked me something. Right.
Oh,
Did-
I'm gonna take the Xbox. Did you see the Sixers won?
Oh, they did come through. No.
Harden's debut. Like again, they pulled away more by 20.
Oh wow, because it was 30 and a half. Okay.
Actually,
All right.
actually, it was like 5 or 7.
Okay. Oh, nice. All right. A little sports talk with my son there. So I really, again, just really appreciate that. And yeah, it was fun to do that. But, and then I have, believe it or not, I have to drive to Sacramento tonight. I don't have to, but I have to be there at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I think I'll see how I feel after this. I usually would rather just drive at night than getting up early again, but we shall see. Anyway, but I really was excited to be here with you all. This is, I have to say, one of my favorite groups, and I know it's a wonky group, so I know I can get into the details, and I really enjoy our conversation. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen. And this is you are the first to see this, because some of this is still, the host is disabled screen sharing. Can someone add me as a host? Is that possible?
Diana, are you?
I just did. Are you seeing?
Okay, let me see if I can do it now. Yep. Okay, it works. And then let me. Okay, can you guys see that okay?
Mhm.
Yes. So you're the first to see this. This is really about, our focus for this year. And I appreciate even my brief conversation here, you talking about the keeping the House, keeping the Senate, a lot to do. But then, of course, at the same time, we need to be advancing our policy priorities at the federal level while we do have majorities, and taking advantage of our majorities here in Sacramento to deliver real, real things for real people from a poverty and a wealth gap standpoint, but also, of course, to make progress on our climate goals. We have, as you may this group probably knows, 420 million metric tons of CO2 we emitted last year. We're reducing at about 4 tons a year, which is good. We're going in the right direction, but it would take over 100 years at that rate. And of course, we've done most of the easy things. So that the stuff remaining is the harder part. So we really need to take very substantial action. So these are the key focus areas that you'll see that we're focused on, generally climate, social justice, which includes public safety, elections, which I know you care a lot about as well, education, economic opportunity, and then really for the quality of life on the peninsula, housing, transit, and health. So I'll go through these, and then you can stop me with questions as we go. Otherwise, I will. I'll make sure that we have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. I'd like to remind everyone of the big picture for climate action. We will have an update of this in about June. I'd like to do a state of the state for climate. That's kind of my goal with my climate change committee, and just be really clear for people, really clear what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, where we're going in the right direction, where we're going in the wrong direction. So again, the goal is not to go through every aspect of this slide, but just to show, refresh ourselves on the major sources of greenhouse gases and the action needed. So electricity, clean electricity about 15%. If you can see on that inner wheel, about 15% of our greenhouse gas emissions right now. That's from the grid itself. Of course, now we're going to probably double or triple our electricity use. All the more reason to get the grid to 100% clean. It's about 57, 58% clean right now, but then we're going to lose Diablo Canyon, which is about 7%. So it's really about 50% clean right now is what I estimate. Transportation is about 50% because about half of that industrial is transportation. So it's a 40% you see there, plus about another 10%. Clean buildings and homes and buildings are about 10%. And then you see other big sources like agriculture, about 7.5%. And then a lot of the industrial pieces, including the oil and gas emissions and cement emissions. So what are we doing this year? Well, we continue to have goals around greening the grid, and we had a great discussion around this last year. One thing we really want to do, and this was part of my 24/7 bill last year, and we're getting good traction with this year, is interim targets for SB 100. So it's great. We have a goal of getting to 100% clean energy for our grid by, who knows what that is. When's the goal for 100% clean energy right now? I'm sure you guys know, but you can shout out if anyone would like. I know it's not a shy group, but
2035.
2045 for 100. So 20 right now it's 60% renewable by 2030, and then 100% clean by 2045. The problem is, while that 60% renewable is a hard goal that people utilities have to work towards, the 100% clean goal, there's no really no pathway right now, identified pathway to get there for the 40% that's not renewable. And again, hydro is part of that. So we know there'll be some hydro, but how are we going to get to the 100%? So we need interim targets to get us there, because it's going to require things like long duration storage. It's going to require geothermal. It's going to require offshore wind. Those are some of the things it's going to require. And so we need these interim targets. At the same time, reliability, tracking and managing progress while ensuring reliability. We have a bill on that very specifically, which really gets this question of what are we using each hour of the day? It's not enough to be able to say now that we're 100% renewable because we buy credits at the end of the year. We really need to see on an hourly basis how much energy is needed and how much of that is clean. Because we know, again, from that 4 to 9 from our discussion last year, that 4 to 9 o'clock, which is now the peak, especially during winter hours, or even, in a day like today, the sun went down, I think at, I know it went down around 7. We're using mostly fossil fuels at that point, 80 to 90%. So we really need to maintain reliability, but really track what's happening each hour of the day. And then reduce barriers to enable faster progress while keeping affordability. And so this is something that I'm working on with my colleagues. This would not just be me, but our electricity rates are about double anyone else. And it's not necessarily the distribution, it's because we put a lot of other things into rates, like wildfire costs, the billions of dollars now we're spending on wildfire mitigation, we put that into rates. The low-income programs, we put that into rates. Other things we put into rates, and that is, PG&E just had another 10% hike. SoCal Edison a 10% hike. PG&E had, I think, a 9% hike last year. This is very much discouraging. It's very tough on low-income people, number one, and it's also discouraging electrification of transportation and of buildings. And so we need to tackle that and make rates more affordable, and put it in the general fund, or use greenhouse gas funds from our cap and trade system that should be going to affordability and really isn't right now. So that was a lot on one slide, but that's greening the grid goals. Next slide is on transmission acceleration. This is the electrical superhighways of the grid. This is not sexy stuff. This is the plumbing, but we can't meet our goals unless we improve transmission. We're just, right now we can build stuff and we can't really move it where it needs to go. And so we have a bill on that. And then slightly more sexy, but maybe slightly more controversial, an infrastructure authority. So we have this idea of an infrastructure authority. This will probably be a multi-year effort. But if we had a central authority, it would cut some of the risk and delays that add costs, and use the balance sheet really of the state to be able to do transmission more cost effectively. So again, this is not infrastructure broadly. This is not highways, things like that. This is infrastructure specifically around clean energy. And there are models. New Mexico has a model that we're basing this on, for example. So transmission, big theme. We have to move clean energy around the state. This is really what I alluded to on the 24/7 reporting. You may remember this from last year. Again, it shows it shows what we're using at each time of the day, and you can see during that day, so from say about 8 o'clock to say 5 o'clock, we're using mostly renewables, and we're not using a lot of, say, natural gas. Oops. But when the sun goes down, this was from October 20th, then we start using more natural gas, for example. So that's what, we're continuing on this piece, which is to get to true 24/7. And again, this is the stated policy of the board of Peninsula Clean Energy, one of the reasons we love Peninsula Clean Energy, and they're working in this direction. Another sort of plumbing of sorts bill that also goes by the unsexy name of tariff on bill financing, but we want to allow ratepayers to make upgrades in their home through utility, to make clean choice, basically be able to finance it on their utility bill. And it's a proven model that's currently used to accelerate adoption of energy and water efficiency measures. But right now there's things that limit it to for home electrification and other clean choices. So we have a bill, a really technical bill on this, on bill financing, but it gets to the buildings sector. That's really the focus there. Buy clean concrete, as you know, and you were helpful. We got the first in the nation bill targeting cement, and that was a big success. And we have a path now to net zero cement. It's actually the only sector of the economy now that we actually have a net zero target on. It's also not till 2045, but it's a net zero target. And this is a very, very hard to decarbonize industry. Cement is the main ingredient in concrete. So now we need the demand pull side of the equation, where we want the state to buy low carbon concrete. So we want concrete to be put into this Buy Clean program to leverage the state's purchasing power. And then I think this is last on the climate from a big picture perspective. One thing I think that will help jumpstart all of this is if we can have the state set a goal for the state of California to be net zero 10 years earlier than the rest of the economy. So if the state of California has to be net zero, meaning all of our state agencies, that means our fleet, which is about 60,000 vehicles. This means all of our government buildings. It's going to leverage procurement. It's going to help jumpstart clean solutions in areas, again, like buildings, and make the state confront some of these hard decisions that the rest of the economy is going to have to face. And so really excited about this one. Oh, and lastly, this came out of my trip to Glasgow. We've been Carlisle from Washington State, and we've been collaborating. I think that's one of the big themes for me for the next several years, is to be collaborating with Oregon, with Washington State, even British Columbia, to have a true Pacific Coast collaborative. And one thing that he's introduced there is to impose an additional tax on the profits of financial institutions that provide more than $1 billion annually in financing to fossil fuel companies. So that the goal here is that we're in Glasgow, we had all these banks make these commitments about, we're going to start, we're going to stop financing fossil fuel projects, and we're going to, we're going to finance clean energy projects. Well, the problem is we're not seeing it. Since Glasgow, they've actually increased their funding in many cases of fossil fuel projects, fossil fuel companies. So this would be a tax on the profits of financial institutions, a way to leverage California to say, hey, are you sticking to what you promised in Glasgow? So that'll be a fun one. And again, a lot of these have not been rolled out yet. So you're hearing this first. A lot of these have not, we haven't even announced these bills yet. And that's one of them. Police radio encryption. This is something we're focused on because Palo Alto is hit first, where they went to full encryption. Of course, we want to protect identifiable information, personal identifiable information, but that should be an excuse to remove the access, say, that media companies have had for the last 70 years to monitor police traffic. And so this is a big showdown with the police. And so I have a bill, it's ready to go. We're trying to get the Attorney General to do it himself. I had Rob Bonta, I had a good conversation with him, but his team has been more resistant. So we're going to figure out if we can do this through the Attorney General's office, or whether we need to run a bill on this, but this is an important one, I think, locally, because a lot of other areas are starting to move to full encryption, and we want a hybrid system where they can certainly go ahead and encrypt person sensitive information, but we need access that we've had in the past. Another one I'm super excited about on our criminal justice standpoint, you may know, and I'll get the stats later. Again, we haven't announced this one yet, and I'll tell you, someone on my team had a relative in jail, and yeah, it was always collect calls, super expensive for the family, or you're spending a lot of money, again, for people who just can't afford it. It's just a huge regressive tax, and we're working with the coalition. A friend of a friend led this in Connecticut, and they were successful in Connecticut. There was a bill in this a number of years ago, the governor, that got vetoed because there's a lot of, I think, false assumptions on cost of the prison system, and just a lot of stuff that just didn't make a lot of sense. So we are really excited about this one. And there's a company that's worth like $1 billion, and all they do is phone calls from prisons. And that just shows you how insane this is. Mental health diversion. We want to make sure that the jails, we're not warehousing mentally ill people. They don't get better, and it doesn't help them, and it doesn't help our prison system. And it's part and parcel of an overall effort. I mean, we need more mental health beds. We know that. We're working on that at the state level. San Francisco is also doing some things. Regionally, we're also doing some things. But we need to do this kind of diversion to make sure that people receive the mental health support and resources they need, rather than warehousing them in our prison system. This is another thing, again, we've not announced, and it's may sound a little technical, but it's a pretty cool thing we're working on to allow the Office of the State Public Defender to issue grant awards to the most innovative public defenders offices. So we have some public defenders offices that are doing really great work in this state, and this would recognize those and allows them to get these kinds of grants, and we need a legislative fix there. This was a bill we talked about last year that does a couple of things, that ensures justice involved folks. That means folks mostly coming out of the prison system are granted the right to register to vote, and that we have better communication between the prison system and the election system, and then also grants disability and military voters who are overseas access to conditional or same-day registration. This got caught up in some last-minute stuff last year, so we held it over. The good news is that it's now also going to be a vehicle to clean up some of the work that was done to make sure everyone gets a mail-in ballot. There was some cleanup work that has to happen on that. So the Secretary of State is using this as a vehicle. So we'll incorporate a couple of things into it, and hopefully get it passed very, very soon, like in the next month, rather than wait to the end of session. Because we already passed it through both houses. We just need to now reconcile it and get it done. On the education front, something we worked on last year, more specifically tailored to San Mateo Community College, where there's about 6,000 eligible students in this Promise Scholars program. We currently only fund about 2,000, and we're fortunate to have community colleges that we have surpluses. We have budget surpluses because the way our community colleges are funded, and they want, the board, to their credit, wants to use that to reduce the cost of tuition, not just tuition, but also the Promise Scholars programs. They get other benefits as well, in terms of books and even transportation, to really significantly reduce the cost. And they're excited about it. John Pimentel has been a real leader there, and we're excited about it as well. This might be the first bill that comes up this year, which is about breakfast and lunch to childcare centers. Right now, there's a per meal penalty due to our area's high cost of living, and a ceiling of $34,000 per year, family force ceiling, to qualify for meals in childcare for the kids. And that's obviously nothing in this area. And really proud that we now have 2 free meals a day for everyone in schools, not just, it's not a stigma for just a few kids. So we want this to happen in childcare centers as well. This is for the, hold on, let me close my door here for a second. Sorry, Percy. No. You went out. I think she's still hoping for food. This is something actually working on with Michael Brownrigg. Michael Brownrigg has been working on this issue now of employee stock ownership plans for a while. And there's a huge number of small businesses that are run by people of the boomer generation, and they've done the surveys. About 56% of them do not have a succession plan. So these are businesses that could just be shut down. Maybe, maybe it could be sold to a new owner. And in many cases, the workforce of these businesses are people of color. And we can move now to a model of either co-op or through this ESOP, these employee stock ownership plans, where the employees become the owners. And we've seen it here, Slice of Pizza, which is in Sunnyvale. So the Chronicle just had a great article on this, the increased number of small businesses that are doing it. Ritual Coffee, I think, just did it. And this will help increase this. And I think it'll be a good bipartisan bill. I'm hopeful of that. We've not announced this one yet either. Minor League Baseball, you've seen what's happening in the Major League Baseball. There's a huge strike going on. Minor League Baseball's players are chronically and fundamentally insufficiently compensated. They have to sign their 7-year contracts. They don't get paid, say, for spring training. So they get paid basically for 6 months, even though they're working in many cases most of the year. And they don't have the right to strike. So this would give them some of the same labor protections. So we're excited about that from an economic opportunity standpoint. And lastly, there's another technical bill. I think this is the year for technical bills on affordable housing. I know Mark Berman has a couple as well, but we're really just both trying to tackle things that make affordable housing more expensive to build, and it just doesn't have to be that way. Seamless transit, you may have heard about this, is one we announced and did get some good press on this. We have to bring back people to public transit. And one of the things that would help us get towards a world-class transit system here is to have integrated fares. So we want ultimately integrated fares and integrated schedules. So we're starting with integrated fares, but this bill also provide a single regional map rather than, as you know, we have 27 different agencies, and we don't really have a connected network plan. And so we're really excited about this. Right now, if you transfer, which a lot of low-income folks, they transfer, you have to pay 2 or 3 times because you're, even for a short trip to these different systems. And so this has been a dream for a long time of people pushing for seamless transit. So that's really everything. Look forward to discussion as we, this great quote, the greatest threat to our planet is belief that someone else will save it. So I know you guys all believe that we need to save it, and that's what we're here for.
Well, Josh, that was a terrific, and I'm going, wow. I'm looking at all these bills and going, yeah, check, check, check. We're going to start our Q&A with each of our task forces getting a chance to ask their most burning question. And then we're going to have everyone else to please put go into the reactions and raise your hand to ask a question. But going in first, I actually see Elsa at the top of the queue there, and I will let Elsa go ahead and ask with her healthcare task force hat on.
I just have to repeat, wow, Josh. And I remember last time we talked, and maybe it was at the smaller group meeting, but just being blown away that, yes, the environment and that huge strategy, but you are knocking it out of the park on every imaginable area that we talk about here. And just thank you for being that open but that effective in it. So we just need to Xerox you across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's very kind, very kind. Working
No,
on it.
it's darn accurate. I just avoided another 4-letter word. But Josh, so on healthcare, as you well know, as a co-author, thank you so much for AB 1400, which was lovingly called CalCare, to try to get a single payer universal system in California, we with 40 million people, so we could make it work. It died eventually in the assembly because it was pulled from the floor vote because they were worried there weren't enough votes for it. And thank you so much for talking with our local assembly members. That clearly worked because we got both of their votes to be yes votes if there had been a vote. But as we look forward to next year, when supposedly it will be reintroduced in January 23, there's no way I want us to, repeat the old stories. And there've been several attempts at this on the way. So for half the assembly, it feels to me as if we need to make it really well known to the legislators and to the teams that go to them that we know how much medical industry money goes into their campaign coffers. And we've got a few next steps from that also. But I'd love to know from your perspective, what do you hear in the halls of the Senate and anything of your chats with the Assembly? What do you advise us to try to be more practical and effective going forward on this?
Well, long topic. We could have maybe we should have a whole other piece on this. I was glad that Kevin supported it. And I actually gave him my book. I think we talked about last time, which I can never remember the exact name of, but I think it's the best book that really helped convince me, which looks at the different systems around the world. If I can't think of the name, I'll put it in the chat. I know we talked about it because there was another book that someone else here had, I think. You heard a couple things. Honestly, I think it's less about contributions. I think certainly that plays into it, but I think people have to believe that it's doable. You heard a lot of concerns about the waiver. Well, we have a waiver, but maybe a Republican president could take away the waiver, and and I don't know, what does that mean? And so there was a little fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the waiver. You heard some people said, well, maybe it should be multi-payer, maybe not single payer, but multi-payer, where it's still, still getting rid of for-profit, get rid of for-profit health insurance, which is the key, really. For me, it's just like, that's number one, right? For-profit health insurance is the key, because then their incentive is to deny claims and make things difficult. And so that is that's sort of something we heard. So, I think we got to keep doing education. And I'll think about this book when I have a moment, maybe again, something else you have, and maybe we could just send it to people. The nice thing about California, it's just not that many people, right? So if there was sort of, we need 20 more Democrats in the Assembly and 10 more in the Senate, that's 30 people, right? We could maybe give out this book, because I think it's, I think it's fantastic.
Do they read? Do they read books?
It's a good question. People are busy, but I don't know. Yeah, I certainly hope that people would. I'm hoping in the Senate, for example, that we will have, our caucus is not, right now we discuss a lot of technical stuff. It's not there's not really a big policy focus. Again, maybe post-COVID we'll have that. Maybe there was a little bit more before, but I think
they're not all like Josh Becker.
Well, there are smart people. Tasha Burner Horvath in the Assembly, she was sort of lead sort of some discussions, and they were going to do some additional work this year. So I'll be in touch with her on that. So anyway, let's follow up, but it's sort of the combination of those things that has to happen, I think.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Let's go on to Flavia. This is the Climate Change Task Force question.
So currently adding solar panels to existing buildings with multiple units is really cumbersome and difficult. And how do you think this process can be fixed so that if there is an intention and desire to get solar, it could happen, and there's not a whole lot of obstacles to stop it?
Say it again, the,
So existing buildings, that multi-unit buildings, so multifamily housing,
yeah,
right now, to get a permit and all the hoops you have to run through to get it, to get solar, it's really, really difficult. So do you have suggestions as to how to fix it?
for solar for multifamily?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting, I mean, one of our big focuses has been electric charging for multifamily, because right now we're building multifamily without electric charging, and then we're gonna expect everyone to have an electric vehicle. And that's an area, literally, it's just so hard to rewire. It's possible, but it's so much harder to rewire after it's built. So if you know Sven Thiessen and others have really led in that area, and probably some folks here. And my colleague Ben Allen has a bill on that this year. So we've been very focused on electric vehicle charging for multifamily. In terms of solar for multifamily, it's interesting. I don't know. I got to look into it. I haven't heard that much about it. Obviously, it makes sense, and in general, right, when people, especially for renters, addressing that issue of who has the incentive to actually invest in clean energy, right? And, if the renters, if they're only renting, then they don't necessarily have the incentive to make that 10, 20-year investment. And then how do we get to the building owner? So it's certainly an important topic. I don't have a great answer for you, though. I'll look into it.
Can I clarify the issue a little bit?
Sure.
We live in a multi-unit condominium, and our roofs are owned by the homeowners association. And homeowners association uses very little electric power. We cannot get credit if we generate massive amounts of electric power off our roof for anything more than what the HOA pays for its power. Therefore, we would be generating excess power and getting no credit for it. And that's the problem, that you can't install an electrical system that is expected to generate more power than you will use.
And in a condo project, each homeowner would have to, there's a bill that has been passed by the legislature, but we have 249 units, and that would be 249 different solar systems that would be put in if everybody wanted to have solar power.
With different
It
companies
just
on the
makes
roofs.
it so difficult to do. Even people who asked us to do this have now said, I'm not going to go through all of that to put solar power on my roof.
So we're wasting all of the potential power that could be generated from our roofs.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And I get it much more clearly. Well, I have Nicole Fernandez, my wonderful district director, is on. So let us take that and get back to you. Because obviously it's a more generalizable problem, but I understand it better now. So let's look
We'd
into it.
appreciate that, because it really is a significant issue. You don't see solar power on many multi-family units.
Right. Good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
And there should
Great.
be.
Thank you for clarifying
So
that.
so if it's not being built new with solar included, right now it tends to be impossible to add it.
But
Yeah.
the
Well,
solar,
you can, and our homeowners association has a procedure you go through, but each person would have its own person
Right.
install it, their own, it's not gonna work.
It's not practical.
No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're
we
going
would
on
love to do it.
We're going to go on to Gail. And Gail, are you doing the social justice representation?
Well,
You're doing
yes, Diana may have a question or two, if I can.
Well, no, but we're putting you guys up. Never mind. Go ahead. We don't have enough questions coming up, so go.
Oh, okay, you're
Sorry.
all right with that. I actually have sort of two, one for Josh to comment and one to raise a bit of awareness. I'll do the raising awareness first. That is that there's a bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 1219, which would do away with the State Water Resources Board and create a so-called Blue Ribbon Commission composed of people from the water districts and from the legislature. And these are the people, especially the water districts, who have been the most problematic in reducing water use and making it more scientific and more reasonable and more environmental. So it would be essentially putting the foxes in charge of the chicken coop. And so I just found out about this today. So I haven't discussed it with my team, but it's clearly a move in a very disastrously bad direction to make those people in charge of our water policy, even if you call them blue ribbon. So I hope Josh will develop a position, or his staff will, and I hope that we will hear about this. And then I want to ask if you have any comments on what can or could be done about reducing the dependency on money bail. It gets complicated because they wanted to replace it with what some view as over-reliance on algorithms instead of community involvement. So there are models for heavy use of community involvement to make these decisions. But what most counties, including our own, are doing is just relying on algorithms, and human rights organizations are very nervous about over-reliance. And Josh, I hope you have some words of wisdom.
Yeah, on both of those, I have heard about, I know George Skelton and the LA Times wrote an article about the water district issue. I think that Senator Hurtado, and she's a great member in many ways, but I think, she's in election, and sometimes she does things for election political purposes that probably don't have a great chance of passing. So I'll look into that, but my sense is that probably doesn't have a great chance of passing, but I'm not supportive of it. So I'll make sure we follow up. In terms of the second piece, remind me again, the second piece was on
bail.
Oh, bail.
What can we
Yeah,
reasonably do about bail reform in the
obviously we passed it, and then the bail industry rallied and overturned it, and then we were gonna, I think, close to having another fix last year, and then somebody got out and did something, and it's just, the media environment was not good, and so they held it. So I'll check in. I know Bob Hertzberg has put a lot of time and effort into this, our sort of former majority leader. So let me check in with him and see where it stands. But I know it's something we've certainly tackled. It's just been a struggle because of that ballot initiative.
And I think we will I've missed a lot because of health reasons, so I hope this didn't already happen, but we are slated, I believe, to have a presentation by Debug, and they've been heavily involved in alternatives, both to bail and alternatives to the algorithms.
Okay, yeah, they may have a good. They
make
may
people so nervous.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe you'll be with us for that
April.
one. Yeah.
Gail, that's our April meeting.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And next question coming from Ashley.
Okay, Greg, Josh, I was struck by that final quote in your presentation about, not waiting, thinking someone else can do it. And it made me think about every few months I read some article where they're all excited about generating and sustaining nuclear fusion, not fission, but fusion. And they describe it as a near limitless zero carbon source of reliable energy. And I actually have talked to, we have Greg Lowe in our group, who is a world-class physicist, as we all know. And I've talked to him about it, and he said, yes, it would be great, but they have missed deadline after deadline for decades of figuring out a way to make it work, to figure out a system.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. But I was looking for Greg's book because I know I have it here somewhere. Yeah, so I had a call with we had a meeting with a company today called TAE. So I tend to be very skeptical. It's one of these technologies that's always 10 years away kind of thing, or maybe 20 years away.
Yeah.
We had a call, and I have a guy on my team who I think Greg's talked to, Ken Branson, who's a double E from Princeton, very smart guy. And these guys claim to be, getting close, have like made the economics work, not at least at a, or at least made, because the whole thing is, can you actually produce more energy than you consume in these processes, right? And they feel that they have, they have succeeded in that. They actually can produce more energy than they consume, which may seem pretty basic, but no one else has done who's attempting a nuclear fusion. So they feel like they're closer, and Ken seemed reasonably impressed. It was a short call, so we'll have to get some more info. So I'd say, listen, I mean, you do have a lot of money is going into it, which is fine. And, it's one of these things, I think if it's like when they used to say, whether you believe in God or not, if you act like you believe in God, there's no downside. you lead a good life. And if there's a God, that's great, So I feel it's kind of that way with nuclear fusion. It's just if we got to act like it, or this reverse, we got to act like it's not going to happen, and do everything necessary. But if it does happen and it ends up being this great source of energy, I mean, they were feeling that what they were doing would be very helpful for, say, medium and heavy duty trucks, for example, which are a huge source of pollution. And if it works, great. But yeah, we can't count on it, I don't think.
All right. So next question coming from Bill Newell.
Hi, Josh. First of all, nice presentation. I especially like your sensitivity toward the labor rights of minor league baseball players. Anything I can do, sign me up. I'm all for the labor rights of those kind of workers.
Right.
But some of the things that I work on and Marshall Dinowitz work on is electoral politics, election. We have elections task force, and I'm also trying to head up a group on election integrity. Now, we know this is, of course, a big national issue. The future of our democracy is hanging on our election integrity right now. Fortunately, in California, things seem to be a little better. But given all that, I'm wondering what your thoughts are, your ideas of how we here in California, particularly people here in DFA and San Mateo County, as we look at electoral politics and election issues and election integrity, what you feel might be some of the issues or priorities that we need to focus on.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks for your words about the MLB, minor league baseball. So you're saying the priorities at the state level or federal, or both?
Well, I think you're a state legislature, so I guess on if there's anything on your level that you feel is going on that we need to pay attention to and impact on. Otherwise, yeah, we're also paying attention to the national elections, but there's limited things that we can do within other states around voter rights, and I would hope that things are pretty good right now in California. But if there's any issues that you're aware of or anything risks that you see on the horizon that we should be aware of.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Yeah, I do think, we're getting there. Mark Berman had a big bill last year. My bill on signature verification, remember we talking about that passed, which I think really pours that up. I've got the bill I did talk about here, which is going to be important. And I'll let you know if we need any help on that. I think we did a lot of the hard work last year, so that one should be pretty straightforward. I know there's work that Mark started when he was chair of elections. Now he's moved on to a different committee, but I'm sure that work is continuing around the recall process. So we don't have a huge waste of money like we did with recalling the effort to recall Governor Newsom. So that's one piece. That'd probably be maybe one of the main pieces here. But yeah, federally protecting our democracy, is incredibly important, and just paying attention to what's happening in other states is important, and figuring out what we can all do to ensure free and fair elections in some of these states is important. There's a represent.us is a nonprofit. I just got something from today. I thought they had a nice piece on this, and taking some of the other things that have worked, say, in California, like a nonpartisan redistricting committee, and moving that to other states. I think that's one of the most important things we can do.
So real quickly, just I know we have a Democratic majority in our state, but are you aware of any shenanigans, for lack of a better term, that's going on in Republican districts right now that might impact people's ability or right to vote in those localities?
Not that I know of right now. We'll keep you posted because there are a bunch of key swing districts. Like my colleague Rudy Salas from the Assembly, who's running for against David Valdedeo for red to blue. So we certainly expect things will come up. We'll keep you posted. But right now, the biggest thing is stop the abuse of the recall process.
Okay, thank you very much. I completely agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, next question coming from, is it Nancy or Jim? Oh, you're muted.
Muted. You're still muted, Nancy.
You're still muted.
You're muted.
I thought I did.
There you go.
This is from the climate task force. And thank you very much for such a nice presentation, Josh. We wonder what your position is on the scheduled shutdown of the Diablo Canyon power plant.
Yeah, I think there's been some interest in it, given, like I said, it is 6-7% clean energy. And in my view, I think if we could keep it running another few years while some of these, because for example, offshore wind, I'm pushing as fast as possible to get it. But right now, it's not projected to say 2029, which means probably 2031. They just made, by the way, $4.4 billion auctioning off offshore wind rights in the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So this is happening. We have floating offshore wind, which is a little more difficult, but I saw that in Portugal. I've seen it working. But anyway, we need a little more time for some of these technologies. So I would personally support. I'm not sure, it's in Senator Laird's district. And so I've asked Senator Laird about it. And, he's sort of in the middle of various pieces of it. And so I'm kind of deferring to him. One of the big issues that PG&E said they didn't want to run it anymore. So question is, who would even operate it? So there's a lot of questions about it. I would certainly, personally be open to it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think the train's kind of moving along at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, and next question coming from Diana.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and for that wonderful presentation. We're always happy to be your guinea pigs. So this is a question I had asked of Assemblymember Mullen, that those cities like Redwood City that are doing a really good job of working with the county and buying hotels for the homeless are starting to get nervous because of the long time loss of revenue for us, TOT, and it's hard to persuade other cities to follow our example because of the thought that they're not going to get any TOT, and then the nonprofits that are have the courage to step up and take over those projects. There is no assurance that there's going to be any revenue for them because many times the residents that are in their hotels are not going to be able to support them. So it's just a plea that we're going to need help. We're going to need state help to support the cities and these nonprofits that are doing this amazing work. And just in the spirit of full disclosure, I did mention this to Kevin as well. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Nicole's on here. I'll talk to her about it afterwards. Maybe we can circle back with you. That's not an issue I had heard of, though it makes sense, right? I mean, sometimes you just, for other reasons, communities just say, oh, we don't want to convert that hotel because, we don't want those people around us or something like that. So that's more what I've heard typically. But what you're talking about is a very concrete thing for cities who have, even ones who've already taken this leap, who are now concerned about that loss of revenue. So that's a good point. I don't know if there's any thought around backfilling some of that revenue, and your point for the nonprofits as well. Yeah, they're running it, and what are the insurances for them? So those are good questions around the home key, around the home key project, and we'll just have to get back to you on that. But I appreciate you raising that.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Marshall.
Thank you. Josh, that your presentation was really quite terrific, hitting all those high points and especially the emphasis on climate, which of course many, if not most of us, think that is the main issue for everything, including our elections task force. Anyway, so this question is actually from our climate task force again, which is we've been paying a little bit of attention on an issue that may not be front and center right now, which is cryptocurrency and its impact on climate, because cryptocurrency utilizes a huge amount of energy. So we wonder if you have a position regarding cryptocurrency and its huge energy usage, and also its use for tax avoidance as well as increasing wealth disparity.
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. Just to be clear, not all cryptocurrencies have to have that kind of impact. So if they're a ledger-based system, like say Bitcoin, then it does have that. It does take energy for mining and those purposes. But there are other ones like Ripple, which was started in the Bay Area, which don't. So I think now they've shown that, hey, you can have a cryptocurrency without that kind of mining, without that energy intensive perspective. And if we are going to have these going forward, if they're going to be part of our financial system, we should move in the other direction. So that's one important point to your first point. The other question, say on tax avoidance, is, I mean, certainly a lot of people are using cryptocurrencies, things like Coinbase, and Coinbase it requires tax reporting, but there might be other people who are using it not just for that, but also for other, kind of shady and illegal things. And I don't know, these tend to be more federal issues, but I think we're sort of grappling with it. I mean, there's a positive sense of decentralizing finance a little bit, but there's all the concerns that you just mentioned, whether it be tax avoidance or whether it's, being used for some kind of illegal activity. So I don't think there's a big role for the state to play right now, but I will continue to watch it. And I do think that we can certainly help raise awareness of that. It doesn't have to be, again, even if we are going to have them, to the extent we can influence it at all, we don't have to have these very heavily energy intensive platforms.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. That was really good to hear. I'm going to ask my question is kind of a little bit related. So we heard the president last night talking about investing in new technology and in green technology. And you mentioned a little bit about battery and storage. Is there anything that the state is looking at towards, funding R&D in batteries and in storage methodology, putting our money where we need it? Because the solar is great until the sun goes down. And if we're not storing it, we're losing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think solar, I think on a residential level, there's a huge effort by the utilities primarily to really kill rooftop solar, and we're working to save it. I had an op-ed this week in the Almanac. If you've not seen it, maybe somebody could send it around. And but we want incentives, I mentioned in there, for storage, right? So we want really increasingly every solar, puts up residential or utility scale should have storage. Yes, we do have some incentives for storage, and I believe Nancy Skinner, who was a real leader in some of that. But my 24/7 energy bill that I mentioned, that will provide that incentive, because the whole point is right now solar during the day is the cheapest thing to build, so people will keep building it. But so that's great. The issue is the nighttime, right? And especially that winter peak I keep talking about from 4 to 9 p.m. When the sun goes down earlier in the winter time. And so we have to provide the incentive for utilities to address that time period. And that time period is going to be served by storage, or not other non-correlated assets like geothermal, say offshore wind. So I'm definitely working on that.
But are we looking at the technology of storage? Is it where it needs to be, or are we, is there investment going in that direction?
Yeah, there's a lot of investment from the private sector. I don't think we really need, because I don't know, have the stats in front of me, but there's, if you think about the amount of storage that was put in place even last year in California, it's huge. Okay. So technologies there can certainly keep getting better, but I think it's about us being a customer and bringing down the cost, just like we did with solar. So okay. Yes, there's still, companies are still innovating with solar inverters and other things. But really what we need to do is really our consumption of solar, us and say Germany, when the work that they did early on, that brought down the cost of it. So we need to keep bringing down the cost of it, I think.
All right. And is there time for one more question?
Maybe one super quick one.
Yeah. Chris Johnson?
Hey, yeah, thank you very much. I joined a little late, but Josh, this has been an incredible session. You guys are very busy. Hey, we had a situation here in Redwood City with a homeless encampment that was on land that's owned by Caltrans. And so Redwood City did not have jurisdiction to appoint resources to clean up the situation. So recently, Gavin Newsom was in Redwood City and Caltrans was here with representatives, and Redwood City Fire Department was there, and they cleaned up the homeless encampment. And guess what? A few days later, it's back again. So and I think the reason why it's back is because of the publicity surrounding the fact that Redwood City did not have jurisdiction over these lands. And it's the only reason why it's a very visible area on El Camino and Woodside Road. So what do communities like Redwood City do when they don't have jurisdiction? And I recognize that the homeless situation or people experiencing homelessness is an incredibly vexing situation with no easy answers. But in this situation, what would you recommend that we do?
Well, I did not know it was back, so thanks for letting us know about that. Because the governor also announced about 1.8 million to transition those people, people living there, right, to housing and to shelter.
Yeah, they refuse services.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I don't know. That's a good question. It's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know how to answer it. We are, and maybe Nicole wants to comment. We did reach out. I know our team reached out to Kevin Mullen's team and Mark Berman's team, and I think there is some work to have a further gathering of this. Nicole, were you going to say something?
Yep. So we are going to be having a meeting in conjunction with Assemblymember Mullen and Assemblymember Berman, the mayor of Redwood City, and staff, to talk about the jurisdictional challenges and what we can do with the District 4 Caltrans team to prevent this from happening, better security for that Woodside Road location, and just sort of the homelessness problem on Caltrans lands at large. So we'll be following that up, but towards the end of the month.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, on behalf of our club, Josh, I'm so happy to have you with us again. And this has given us a lot of things to be looking forward to. And if there are any of, you want us to come up, I'm thinking we're going to be coming up to Sacramento maybe this year and being able to, do some work on site, talking to all our Assembly and Senate members. And if there's bills you want us to be pro or con on, we'll help spread the word. We'd be really happy to. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see everyone. Great to see everyone.
Good to see you too. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Get some sleep.
We're glad he doesn't need any, given those things he's working on.
Well, that was just marvelous. And I just, me, I like the list of legislative bills. And there were some really good wonky ones in there that, but those are the meat and potatoes of things that really need to pass in order for other things to happen. And I really like to see that he's working on them. We'll go ahead and go back to our task force reports. I think we finished up with the elections task force. Marshall and Bill, if you'll confirm that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, and as Bill mentioned, we gave you an update last time. We haven't met since then. We meet next Monday.
All right.
And anybody that wants to join, please let me know. We'll send out the invitation in the next day or so for a Zoom meeting.
Sounds good. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Flavia for a climate change task force report.
Okay, well, our last meeting, we spent the majority of our time trying to figure out what questions we wanted to ask Josh, and we actually did a considerable amount of research and wordsmithing. So I think what Josh is going to get from us is more follow-up questions. He may have answered one or two, probably at least the nuclear Diablo Canyon question. It's kind of already a done deal, and it's probably not going to be prolonged. But the other two questions, we've done a lot of research, and we're probably going to do follow-up questions to him. So that's where we've been focusing up here in Ashland, although this climate task force isn't involved. It's kind of interesting learning how a small town is kind of trying to engage about climate change and the progress that's being made. So there's a couple of big movers and shakers up here, and all it takes is a few people that are pretty committed to start rattling city council and start gathering coalitions and putting something in motion. So I would say that's about it for climate change right now.
Yeah, I think definitely follow up on the solar, because Josh definitely, that was something he really seemed interested in getting more details on.
Yeah, he did say that that Bitcoin uses a lot of energy and Ethereum uses a lot of energy, but Bitcoin is kind of like the biggest. There's like 200 of them out there, at least 200 of them out there. And so what are we going to do? Just let Bitcoin continue to use all that energy, or what? I mean, there's no game plan to say, hey, stop that, So there's going to be a little bit more follow-up on that one too.
If I may make a quick comment, he seemed to be a little bit surprised about our input relative to solar on multifamily dwellings.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody here could tell us what's the best way to contact him and give him more detail on that.
So the clarification you need to be aware of is that usually when we housers are talking about multifamily dwellings, we're talking about renters, right? We're talking about, and so you kind of caught him off balance, because that's generally we're talking about developers who are doing an entire building of solar. And so they are not having the challenge that you're describing, which is your homeowners, right? You own your condos. And so it's a different conversation. And so you did kind of catch him off balance with that specific issue. But I put in
the legislature did pass rules and ways to that it can be done, but it's just so cumbersome.
It's impractical,
and there should be a
they think
different.
they've solved the problem.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just need to explain it indeed. We need to clarify the question and explain.
Right.
That's why I would like an opportunity. What's the best way to get to him, to give him more concrete, specific details that he can work with.
You
But
call
even in
his
your
office and
situation,
ask for
there
an
is a way to streamline
Well,
it. So
okay, one at a time, one at a time. Okay, who's talking next? Because I had Elsa and Diana talking at the same.
Sorry.
Elsa?
I'll offer.
Okay.
You call his office, which you can Google easily, and you'll talk to one of his staffers and you give a quick précis of what it is, and they'll tell you whether they also want you to write. But he's
Okay.
very responsive.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
That's all we need. All I need
okay,
to know.
but wait a minute. Nicole was on the call. She's aware of the issue. Ashley, wouldn't Nicole be the best one to direct information to?
Okay.
She's very good at referring people, so yeah, that might be a good one.
Okay,
Okay.
And you,
thanks.
and
We'll
you've
get
got
to
her,
her.
you've got her contact info?
No,
I can find it and put it in chat.
Okay, so
Thank
that
you.
would be,
Thanks.
that would be good, because that way, because he said he and Nicole were making notes of that. And so this is, now you're ready to simply follow up.
That's a
And
good.
give them more detail, yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think he's interested in it. It's, as Diana pointed out, it's often discussed about building something, and we're talking retrofit.
Yes.
So,
Both building and retrofit, both.
yeah.
Both.
Well, and I think that a similar question might be, what about an apartment house?
Yes,
And-
same problem.
well, it isn't the same problem. That's what I
No,
was trying
just
to
owners of
clarify.
apartment houses have more expenses.
No. Well, okay.
True.
So it isn't the same problem because there's a way to divide the use of your, it would be possible, in other words, if you weren't having separate conversations, even in your situation, to put a large solar unit on your roof. And then there would be a way to separate the energy so that it would be divided among the residents. And that's what you would do in a multifamily one. You put the solar on the roof, and then the energy is divided among the residents between the units.
If
there's
you
a way
can
to
tell
do
us
it.
how that works, I'd like to hear it.
Well, but you're having a different conversation with
Yeah,
your,
that's a
with
different,
your housing.
that's an apartment.
Oh,
One
Yeah,
person
so
owns it.
it just
Right.
needs, the conversation just needs to change, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Gail, I see your hand raised. You're muted.
Some places have managed to have local solar networks,
Yeah.
which do not feed into PG&E. And PG&E fights these like crazy. They really try to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I didn't want to, take up time to raise that issue, but I think our legislators could do a lot more to advance local solar. I suppose it's true. I've read an account that when the fires burned through a very large area in Northern California, it was on the Indian reservation that had their own local power source that was the source of all communications for everybody in the area, because all the other communications were down. And I think this is really something to pursue, but we're so much at the beginning that it's hard to raise other issues like this, but it seems like the low hanging fruit.
Well,
Except
and
for
I
the opposition of PG&E who wants to have their hands on it, yeah.
Yeah, I do think that Peninsula Clean Energy is doing something about these little microgrids, and that's, I think, what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
microgrids, yeah.
But again, that's, we're lucky we have a community energy that's doing things like that.
Yeah.
Well, let me swing it back to Gail and Diana for a social justice task force report. Anything you guys want to bring up?
So actually at 7 o'clock, Nancy and I had a very nice conversation for half an hour, and we decided, well, no one else was coming, so we adjourned for lack of a quorum. So the social justice has no report at this time.
Sorry. Gail, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I've just been so out of it. I'm so preoccupied with other issues right now. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to see you at the meeting tonight, and you look pretty darn good tonight, and like you're perking up.
Oh
So.
yeah, I have my energy back up. There's still some things that need a lot of work that haven't rebounded as hoped. And I'm spending tons of time and energy on adapting, finding, learning about using adaptive stuff. It's just very time consuming.
All right. Well, that's actually very apropos. Let's turn over to Elsa for anything else on healthcare.
So Elsa once a month checks in with Gail. And I just want to say yesterday, somehow we talked on the phone one of these days. And I said, oh, Gail, I can hear you're out. And she said, yes, I'm at the hardware store getting XYZ. And I said, Gail, did you get there on your scooter? Now, this hardware store is several miles from her home, I know. And she said, yes. And I just thought, hallelujah, going to the hardware store on her scooter on the sidewalk that whole way. That was the best thing much that I could hear. And I saw extremely briefly this afternoon.
I don't yet have a scooter that will do that. I got there on Ready Wheels. It was a 3-point journey, but on the last leg of the journey, I came home on my scooter, rather than waiting around for Ready Wheels,
And sorry, I am getting to healthcare, but last Sunday we gave Nancy Goodban a mini tiny outdoor in her front yard birthday party. And who was the first person there but Gail on Ready Wheels, and one of the last to leave. So I'm just going to say, where there's a will, there's a way. Okay, healthcare, back to that. I have an ask for this group tonight, which is that, as you know, we recently we're all gung-ho about AB 1400, which would have been CalCare, which would have been the California version of a universal single payer health system, actually a health system, which was pulled at the last second by the author because he was quite sure he didn't have the votes to pass it. And what I have seen so to me, out of everybody who was working on it in the state, the nurses definitely had the biggest and the most organized organization. But interestingly, when we were in meetings with the staffs of Kevin Mullen and of Mark Berman, we in each meeting had a physician from something called PNHP, the Physicians National Health Plan, or Health Program, Physicians for a National Health Program. They have 3.5 thousand members in California. They were brilliant. They clearly have a ton of experience, but they frame things so well also. I see Ashley shaking her head. Yes, thank you. And everybody in these meetings was fantastic, but they added a perspective and an ability and just a way of framing it that I thought was terrific. And then, but again, the nurses meaning the California Nurses Association, which is a subset of NNU, the National Nurses Association. So I'll use them interchangeably. They have like 100,000 people apparently in California, which blows me away. But they had a lot of us organized too. There definitely weren't 100,000 nurses working on it, but I have uncovered during this work, okay, there's the physicians group, there's the nurses group. There's also PDA with one of our speakers, Dr. Bill Honigman, whom you remember, and PDA is the Progressive Democrats of America who've been into healthcare, not warfare for forever. They were big Berniacs. They are at every convention and every convention, national and California, and are very progressive. We also had Paul Song speak to us a few years ago, and he is the head of, or was until recently the head of PNHP, the Physicians for a National Health Program. So we're clued in to a lot of the really good people. The other group, as Ashley mentioned recently, which has been really hot on this, is the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party. And the Progressive Caucus now has more than 1,000 members. It is by far the largest caucus within CADEM, the California Democratic Party. Amar Shergill, who runs it right now, is not letting go of CalCare. He was livid when the bill was pulled, because pulling the bill means you don't see the votes and you don't know who was a naysayer. And he and the nurses really wanted to be able to go after those people. Well, the nurses, who are the big organization, have now dropped this, in my humble opinion, like a hot potato, and moved completely to the NNU, the national scene. And yet we saw tons of volunteers here really working, their legislators, and working so hard on rallies and everything to pass this. I do not want it reintroduced, or a new version of the bill introduced next January, with nothing to happen between now and then. So I have been working with the physicians, trying to, I'm only at the next to top level with the nurses, but also PDA and the Democratic Progressive Caucus, to get a roundtable. Well, it turns out there already is a roundtable, but there's nothing on the agenda of the roundtable right now. And it is called, let's see, Healthy California Now. So I'll call it HCN for short. So I was told by the head of PA, the physicians group, please, 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 can't you join it? And please, can't you get DFA to join it? And I said, well, I can work on my chapter, but I'm not DFA national or anything. And by the way, I haven't even gotten national to return an email or a call, which is interesting. And both PDA and PNHB worry that DFA has kind of disappeared. Then I said, you should come to our meetings. So we're alive and well, but it's true that a lot of the rest of what they do has kind of downsized. They want us to join this roundtable group, which is HCN, the Healthy California for Now. And they have a meeting this very Friday. They have monthly meetings, and that is the meeting to both debrief what happened with AB 14 and what the push was like, as well as to say, in my humble opinion, what should happen going forward. But instead of having them all meet individually, and I've been to the individual meetings, I really want to help force the conversation there to say, sure, what could we have done better? But in turn, what do we do for the next 8 months here this year, so that when a new bill is introduced in January 2023, we've already seeded a lot of the understanding. And you heard Josh just now say there needs to be more awareness of why it's a good idea. And the fact that he said it's not so much what all the lobbyists are arguing that in the campaign contributions, it's really they have to understand why it's so important and such a no-brainer. And he, the 2 points he made in that are 2 of the 3 points that we have heard time and again in our meetings with staffs and with the legislators. We know how to fight back on that, but the physicians have the best framing of all that. So I want them all working together as a group. So I would like you to vote that we could become members of Healthy California Now. Over to.
So I'm going to turn this over to Ashley to help us through the procedural, because normally we should have put this out as at least in the newsletter the other day. But our bylaws do allow this, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. Wait, you're muted.
You're muted, Ashley.
Nope, you're muted.
You're still muted.
You're still mute.
Well,
there you go.
If you think that'll be better, okay. Yes, so I was looking at taking a deep dive into our bylaws, and they have, they're very specific rules about what to do. But then there are other rules about how you can bypass those rules and supersede them. So I took a look at it, and first from our bylaws, and Susie mentioned this, It does say notice of the meeting shall be deemed sufficient by any manner specified above, which includes the date, time, place, and of the meeting, and is calculated to be received at least 24 hours to the meeting, which says it should have gone out in our newsletter. And under that, number 3, notices shall contain the subject and specific items which are expected to require a vote of the membership. Okay, we didn't do that. But going down further under rules for meetings, we have a clause that says the club may suspend specific portions of these bylaws and or Robert's Rules of Order for purpose of emergency business by a vote of 2/3 of the membership present at a meeting, unless blah, blah, blah. So that is how we do it. And it says that we have to specify what article we are suspending by reading it aloud. And I just told you that one, which was the notices should be noticed. The subject matter must be noticed before the meeting. So that's what we are suspending. So I'm going to make a motion that we suspend that, that subject in the bylaws by virtue of this being an emergency, because we have to decide before Friday. So I'm going to make a motion that we suspend that that notice that's in our bylaws. Any discussion?
Yes. I guess I missed that we had to do it by Friday. Is that, Elsa, why do we have to do it by Friday?
You're muted.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
That's the first meeting that they all will gather together for after AB 1400 was not voted on.
So
And that's the meeting at which they go over what didn't happen well and they look forward. And they asked me, and I already wrote a draft press release that would come out after that meeting. And so they would like me at the table. That's all.
So
I guess my question is it an emergency that we have to do it by Friday?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, here is the problem, Marshall. The next time the membership could get together to vote on this would be 1 month from now.
I get it. I understand, but
this is our only opportunity to get in on the ground floor and to be noted as a supporter and a partner of this organization.
And it is also because DFA both knows how to think well and be passionate about something and how to organize. And the doctors know how to think well. The nurses know how to organize well. They need somebody to put the combination together. And they have looked at me because I've talked to each one of them and said, please, can't you be there?
No.
So I suggest that if we're not at that meeting, they can go off and you know, at that meeting, they will decide, are we or aren't we going to do anything for the rest of this year? So I consider that an emergency.
that's why I asked. Okay.
And we've got a question from Nancy.
To happen.
We were late to the meeting. Can you explain what this is? And I think in your motion, you need to put the article and the section number of the.
All right, good point. All right,
By the way, I second the motion.
Yeah, and a second.
Okay, so this is, I have my pages out of order. This is under meetings, section 7, Roman numeral 7, meetings, and it is under C, notice of meetings, number 2, number 2 and 3, because 2 says that it has to be noted 24 hours. And also that the notice must contain the subject and specific item which is expected to require a vote of the membership. So that is what we would be suspending. And do you also want me to read what article permits us to suspend that? This is what I'm required to read, what we are suspending. And the rules for the meeting that allow us to suspend it are under Roman numeral 8, rules for meetings, letter F. And you're right, Nancy, I did need to include that.
But can you explain what it is too? We were late. I didn't hear what it is that you're talking about.
Okay.
You want us to vote on?
So the reason we're having this discussion is Elsa, during her healthcare task force report, is asking for us to, as a club, join the Healthy California Now roundtable. And in order to do that today, we now need to suspend the rules for the meeting notice. That's step 1. And then we'll have a second follow-up.
Okay.
Diana, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah,
this vote will be on suspending the rules.
Correct.
It will not be on passing Elsa's motion, but.
I'd like to call the motion.
Well, just a second, Marshall, I have a comment to make. So it's possible that, this is a little bit possibly irregular, and I apologize about that, but we did talk about this in an org email. It's possible that there were enough people who were in that conversation, that email conversation, that we reached 2/3 of whatever population we have in our membership tonight.
I'd like to call the motion, please.
Well, that's just saying that we don't need the rule, but I'm saying that we have
No, you can't
2/3.
I don't think you can retroactively do that. But anyway, I call the motion.
Okay, wait, Marna's got her hand up. You're muted.
You're muted.
This, all right, I just wondered, Elsa, if you could, if the Healthy California Now, whatever it is, roundtable would accept you and a few other people from us, saying that we didn't have the ability to vote on it this time. We're with you, we'll be there the next time. And for this meeting, would you accept us, maybe 2 or 3, as the representatives of DFA?
They only have groups at this meeting because they're a consortium of it. So they only have one person from each group at the meeting, and each person has to represent a group. So I would be representing this group.
I see.
Okay.
And I'd like to make the point that our group has always been so solidly behind single payer that I don't think, in order to suspend this rule, we're going to have to get a 2/3 majority. And just based on our support of single payer and the fact that we are activists and this is a chance for us to actually do something, I don't think we're going to have any more difficulty getting a vote this time than we would next month.
Vice versa. Yeah, I call the vote.
Yeah, the vote has been called. So, oh gosh, here, I'll go to Robert's rules.
It's not debatable. I call the vote.
No, it is debatable. That's another vote.
Yes, you have to vote on doing it. That's part of the
I second that.
Marshall has called the question. All in favor, raise your hands.
In the dishwasher of voting on it.
I'm not sure. I don't know. Oh,
Just
voting on it?
Calling the question.
Okay.
Okay, I think that is clearly a majority. All we needed for that is a majority. Okay, now let's go to the vote on suspending that requirement. And for that, we will need a 2/3 majority. All in favor, raise your hands.
Not sure.
It is almost unanimous, but I am going, just to make sure, I'm now going to say all
16.
opposed, please vote.
Bill, please lower your hand.
Not be here.
Okay, I see one opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, passes. Now,
Good.
go to Elsa's original motion. Would you restate the motion, Elsa?
Yes. I would like the club to vote to join Healthy California Now.
Second.
Okay, that's been, is there any more discussion? All right, let's go to the question then. All in favor of joining this organization, please raise your hand.
Where are we?
I think that's everybody. Anybody opposed? Okay, great, it passes. I would like to.
To get sued, I'll be the only one.
Okay,
Now, we have,
I would like to complicate this a little further. They also, as a condition of joining this organization, have asked the organizations that join to contribute $50 to help make this organization run, to pay for their expenses. Now, lovely Elsa has offered to pay that for us out of her own pocket.
Yeah.
But I would like to see us put our money where our mouths are. So I am going to move that the club pay the $50.
I'll
Second.
second your motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I call the motion.
Oh,
Then
don't.
we have to vote on it, don't.
All those in agreement with calling the question, please raise your hand. Okay, that's passed.
got it.
All in favor of the club paying the $50 fee, please raise your hands. I tell you, the bylaws and Robert's rules are just a bucket full of fun. So congratulations, that is.
Wait, does anyone oppose?
Oh yeah, anybody? No, everybody's hand was up.
Okay. Yay!
You'd be in trouble with the city attorney tonight, actually.
Yeah, thank you. I just can't believe how patient you all are, how knowledgeable Ashley is, how calmly and graciously she delivered all that. And just sorry for dragging you through it all.
I've seen so many fights over Robert's rules as a central city.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've learned the hard way.
All right.
See,
And thank you, everybody, for sticking around. I do have one last question, and that's to Bill Newell. We didn't get to Election Integrity Task Force. Is there anything you want to leave us with tonight?
That's fine. Not at this time. I'm still a task force of one, so we'll see how it goes. I'll just add anecdotally to go with Marshall's little report about Texas, which just held their election the other night, and that is that because the election integrity is so extreme in that state right now, the way they did redistricting or didn't do redistricting, most all the Republicans got voted in, and there won't even be a primary. So the Republicans are very strong in that state, and perhaps looking at how redistricting is done in the future will go a long ways towards voter integrity, and that would include California.
Thank
I'll
you.
leave it at that.
All right, guys, it's 9:08 on my clock, and thank you, everybody, for sticking around
Thank you.
and being flexible early in the meeting. It was worth it to hear Senator Becker. I just kind of went, man, I feel kind of charged up. He's got so many things to work on, and most of them dovetail beautifully into our task forces. So I love it.
We are so lucky to have him.
Yeah, he's really good.